Greetings all, this is Ohio Dan. I wanted to give a little bit of commentary on sort of a political debate or rivalry, or whatever you want to call it, an ideological difference of opinion when it comes to economic systems, and to give my opinion that really disagrees with both sides. This is one of these issues, like a lot of issues for me, where I don't really take one side or the other, and I end up pissing everybody off at the end of the day. But socialism and capitalism both suck. And there seems to be this very prevalent false dichotomy that you have to support one or the other. They both exist either based on falsehoods, in the case of socialism or all forms of Marxism, or just based on exploitation with capitalism. And again, I make everybody mad when it comes to these kinds of issues. That's ideologically driven, at least. But the problem with socialism and all forms of Marxism is that they defy human nature. They say that people are communal and want to share everything, and people are not selfish. They'll help each other out and whatnot. And of course, people are exactly that, right? People will be selfish. They will be concerned, at the very least, with just themselves and their family members and whatnot, and not give a crap about everybody else. So when you just tax them to death and take everything that they earn and redistribute it to everyone else, like socialism does, people are going to be lazy. People are not going to really want to work that hard. People would rather benefit from other people's work because people are selfish. People are basically not willing to do that for strangers. That's not how human nature is. And so, of course, anybody with any observational skills can really figure that out. I'm not saying people can't do good things, but for the most part, people are selfish. People are greedy. And so if you allow them to benefit from that kind of system, instead of being the one that works hard and has everything taken from you, guess which option most people are going to try to pick? It's not going to be the work hard for little to no gain option. So socialism doesn't work. You eventually run out of other people's money, and it's completely inconsistent with how human nature actually functions. And it's designed so that the state can basically take over everything, right? That's the other aspect of it, basically. That's the end result, is the state takes control, says they're redistributing the wealth for everyone's benefit, but really it's just the people in power that become the ruling class, that become the ones with wealth, and then everybody else becomes poor. That's really what socialism does. Socialism sucks. But capitalism also sucks, because capitalism acknowledges these aspects of human nature, that people are selfish, that people are greedy, but that it just encourages them to indulge in some of those negative aspects of our nature, right? It encourages people to be more selfish and more greedy and more about yourself over everybody else when it comes to, well, I won the game of life by making all this money and you guys didn't succeed in the same way, so money is everything, greed is everything, and these are the aspects that matter, rather than curtailing these darker aspects of human nature and saying, let's channel greed into something positive. It just celebrates greed. It just says, make as much money as possible. Who cares if you screw other people over? Exploit people where you can. Everything is about profit, and that's not good either. It may be more consistent with human nature, but it certainly doesn't do anything to channel that into something better. Now, I'm probably going to get people on my channel that disagree with this, that say that, oh, there's this invisible hand mechanism. But look for yourselves at kind of what capitalism actually does. Does everybody really benefit from that system where corporations are maximizing profit and paying workers as little as they possibly can? Is that really healthy for the economy? Is that really a good social fabric to have in terms of your economic system, in terms of valuing greed and profit for its own sake? No. Now, coming up with an alternative to such a system is a challenge, but I think it's actually doable. We've had economic systems in the past, before capitalism, before any form of Marxism, right? These are both relatively new systems. Yes, the Industrial Revolution really required the development of new economic systems, And I get that we can't go back to like feudalism or anything like that, but surely we should be able to come up with something that doesn't deny human nature, but doesn't encourage the darker aspects of human nature to run rampant as well. That basically says, hey, there are going to be rules. We're not going to favor these big corporate entities getting into bed with the state so that they can maximize profit and exploit everybody else. We're not going to favor this idea of the government just taking over everything and redistributing everybody's wealth and taxing everybody at 100% either. We're going to let people keep most of the money that they earn, but at the same time, we're going to break up the larger corporate entities. We're going to have rules, and there's going to be a balance of power. That, to me, the sort of limitation of power between the state and business entities and the people, that sort of balance of power is what we really need in order to have an economic system that treats people fairly. But instead, the government or corporations are basically your only two choices, right? The government via socialism controlling everything, or corporate entities via capitalism controlling everything. And they're really two sides to the same coin, right? There's not really much of a choice. And so, to me, guys, these economic systems are seen as the only alternatives to one another on purpose so that people don't start to think, hey, how can we actually avoid being taken advantage of? How can we have a system that works? How can we make life affordable instead of relying on the government or corporations to give us everything? I think there's a purposeful design in keeping this false dichotomy between socialism and capitalism in place so that people don't think that there's an alternative, that you can't have a system where there's a free market, but there are rules. You can't just acquire everything and make billions and billions of dollars and not be broken up because you have a monopoly. That's what people would need to think to actually try to reform things and to actually come up with something else that's better. That can't be allowed. Just like men walking away are very similar to the understanding that men walking away from a corrupt family dynamic and just letting women basically deal with the consequences of what feminism and gynocentrism have done, leaving women to their own devices and allowing society to unravel in that way. That's the last thing that the powers that be want. They want men to fight back. They want men to either be feminists and say they want to help women with everything and basically have this self-defeating ideology from a man's point of view, or be against feminism and advocate for change that's never going to happen and continuing to be part of the system, or even be an incel, because incels, by the nature of how they view themselves, not by what they have to be, incels are defined by their inability to get women. Even that requires those men to define themselves based on how women see them, how they are perceived by others in society, instead of just men walking away. Instead of men just choosing their own path and saying, well, society can do what it's going to do, I'm out. That's the last thing that the powers that be want. And I think a similar thing is going on in terms of economic systems. You have to support capitalism or socialism or basically some other form of Marxism, which would be socialism or communism, because if you don't, then you're on the other side. This false dichotomy is presented this way so that people don't take their power back, so that people don't see that that's two sides of the same coin, that both of these economic systems, although their theoretical foundations are different, are both designed to exploit you in the end. That's the last conclusion that I think the ruling class wants people to reach. The intelligentsia, the media, the people that want to control the narrative for those that have the purse strings. I think that has been deliberately presented that way as a false dichotomy so that people continue to fight each other instead of realizing that we need something new and something different, which again probably is something like a free market system with rules. That's not capitalism. That's not socialism. That's something that might actually work. Now, if you guys have other ideas for an alternative economic system that hasn't been tried, that would be an improvement over capitalism, would be an improvement over socialism, and makes more sense to you than just a free market system with rules, then go ahead and talk about what your theory would be, what could actually work in this environment. But I do think this false dichotomy is presented in such a way for a reason. Just like this idea that you have to oppose feminism or be a feminist or be a traditionalist, rather than just having men walk away, anything is better than that. I think it's something similar here where we want you to support one economic system or another that's designed basically to exploit you, because if you get to thinking about what an alternative might be, you might come up with something that might actually be unsatisfactory to those that are really in control, to those that really have the wealth and power in modern Western society. I think that's a lot of what's going on, to be honest. But I rarely hear people say this, that I'm against capitalism and I'm against socialism, because they're just set up to exploit you in different ways. And I think it's presented that way on purpose so that people don't think along those lines. Let me know what you guys think. Is one of these economic systems somehow redeemable? I don't really believe that it is. I think you have to make a that's not real socialism or that's not real capitalism kind of argument, which I'm not really seeing much of a basis for as far as being legit, to be honest. But let me know what you guys think. I reject both economic systems. I think they're both designed to exploit people. And I think that people should pretty much just make economic decisions based on what they think is best for them, because there aren't really going to be any reforms that are offered. Again, as I said in my video about controlled opposition, I don't think there's going to be any real reform that's offered when it comes to this. But I don't support the idea that a return to real capitalism or a movement further into socialism is going to fix anything. I don't think it will. I think that's a false dichotomy, and I think both are bad economic systems.